we might make a start. Thank you very much for coming along. My name is Belinda Sorensen. I'm the PLP coordinator, the Personal Learning Plan Coordinator at Scotch. We might just call it PLP from now on. And tonight's just to give you a bunch of information about the PLP. Now, to say straight up, there's going to be a lot of information presented, so we will actually email out a link to a copy of all these slides in a couple of days' time so you can access all the information. So first up, what is the PLP? Well, it's the students' first taste, for most of them, of the South Australian Certificate of Education. So subjects in the SACE are sorted into Stage 1, which is Year 11, and Stage 2, which is Year 12. And the PLP is actually a Year 11 subject, but we study it with all the students at Year 10 level. It's a 10-credit subject, which means it's just one semester, but we spread it out across the whole year to make the most of the opportunity we have with the kids. And the assessment criteria for the PLP is really very simply three things. It's about setting goals and planning strategies to achieve them, it's about reflecting on those goals, and then it's about developing your understanding of selected Australian curriculum capabilities. Now, these selected capabilities come from the 7 general capabilities of the Australian curriculum, but we've chosen to focus on just 3 in a greater depth. So, out of the 7 capabilities, we decided that we can frame a whole lot of topics that will actually give the students an opportunity to get a head start on a bunch of skills that they can build for later in life before the pressures of the Year 11 and 12 curriculum really kick in. We want to prepare students for some of the challenges that we know they're going to face after they finish their schooling. Challenges that we've all seen in articles that describe the future of employment. What skills will they need? How will they be measured? How will they be judged? So we were able to identify 10 of these skills, soft skills maybe you've heard them mentioned as, we'll call them transferable skills. And these 10 skills will be presented as discrete topics throughout the PLP, but we can actually link these back to those 3 chosen capabilities of the Australian curriculum. And if we bring back in the assessment criteria, you'll hopefully see how it all fits together. So the students are assessed on setting goals and planning strategies to achieve them, reviewing how well those strategies went. At no point are they assessed on actually achieving their goals, because it is a learning experience. And then developing their understanding of the chosen capabilities is now scaffolded much more in discrete topics, so the students know which ones they're focusing on when they're reflecting in their assignments. But it doesn't end there. We can actually incorporate a whole lot of non-assessed components to the PLP that again provide students with amazing opportunities before the pressures of Year 11 and 12 kick in. So there's a service learning placement, and you'll hear more about that from Peter March in a few minutes. There's also a workplace learning placement of 5 days. Now you may well know this as work experience. We're just changing our terminology to fit with the paperwork, and it becomes a lot less confusing that way. There's a Goose Island outdoor education camp, which is also 5 days long. And there's also a topic of career exploration and discovering future pathways. So essentially, careers exploration is finding your place in the world of work. And I'm sure you'll agree it requires a high level of personal understanding as well as an understanding of the workplace that you're about to enter and the opportunities that exist in there. After all, how do you know what type of career might suit you if you haven't delved into what might be out there and what opportunities exist in different locations? So the first step of us achieving this is to complete the Moresby testing. Now this is used in approximately 85 schools all around Australia, about 70% of private schools in the UK, a number of other schools all around the world, and we're the only school in South Australia to undertake the full complete Moresby profile with all of our students. It's based on identifying the common area that happens when interests, abilities and personality overlap for the students. So what we're looking for is the purple area. Moresby is different from academic results in that it doesn't measure pre-learned content. So it identifies patterns of strength for each student, and we build a profile that can best harness those strengths. One level of thinking about it is very much like a sporting analogy. For example, if we were to analyse an athlete in terms of their physical composition, we could possibly predict what type of sport they might be naturally suited to. So if we just took the elements of fast twitch or slow twitch muscle fibres representing either explosive power or endurance capabilities, and matched that with limb length for a height advantage and body mass for agility and manoeuvrability, we could possibly suggest that a particular body type might suit particular sports. For example, if this were a particular profile that someone had, long legs, lower weight, plenty of explosive power, they could be suited to high jumping amongst a range of other sports. If this was their profile, long legs, low weight, but this time much fewer fast twitch muscle fibres and much more of an endurance capability, perhaps middle to long distance running. And if this was a profile, low height, high weight, lots of explosive power, amongst plenty of other options, could be sumo wrestling. So we're not suggesting that once students have been tested, they've been solved, they've been profiled. What we're saying is it's always worthwhile to take stock of natural advantages and see how they might fit. So what's involved in the Moresby testing? Well, to start with, there's a careers interest questionnaire. This is an online survey that the students will be completing either this week or next week at school. It's a completely subjective measure in the profile. It asks questions like, would you like to work inside or outside? And it presents a huge range of questions about the content, location and nature of work that students would most enjoy. It also asks what they would not want to do. The Moresby profile contains a series of standardised tests that assess a huge range of abilities, skills and even personality measures in an objective fashion. Some of these are the reasoning test. So on Monday the 26th of February, all Year 10 students will be in the chapel completing a series of these tests. This is the first test, it's the longest test in the series of tests that lasts for 30 minutes. And this is all about looking at the depth and level of complex thought. They'll also see some tests on the type of information they prefer to work with. They'll also look at the ways they like to plan solutions and plan problems. There's also personality tests that look at their awareness, their flexibility and their decisiveness. They're not subjective personality tests like Myers-Briggs. They're quite different. They're set in a work context. And all of those tests fit together. So if we were to bring this back to the sporting analogy, I'm sure you'd agree that there's a distinct difference between having access to all of the information about students and about athletes and being bound to use the results. So we use Moresby as a tool to pave the way for a more insightful personal understanding, and I'm sure you agree that finding your ideal place in the world of work requires a high level of personal understanding as a starting point. So it's not seen as a simplistic sorting device, magical or otherwise. It's a tool that helps us with that starting point for further exploration. That starting point might look like this. So each student receives 12 suggestions, which are in black, that factors in their interests, their abilities, their personality, that came out through the Moresby testing. Each suggestion is further linked to related fields that encourage wider exploration or associated areas. We then look through these suggestions and explore them further in PLP throughout Term 2. So the timeline for careers education in PLP is that we take this starting point, we explore study and employment opportunities in related fields through a year-level excursion to the Adelaide Tertiary Studies and Careers Expo right at the end of this term. Each student receives a one-to-one follow-up interview talking through their Moresby results with either Mark Kelly or myself, it depends what house they're in. And PLP tasks focus on researching prerequisite subjects, assumed knowledge, entrance requirements, labour market opportunities in nominated careers and advancement opportunities. So finally, there's an information evening at the end of Term 2 which is held to discuss strategic approaches to maximising future pathways after school. So I'll now introduce Mr. Mark Kelly, who'll come and talk to you about the Goose Island Camp and workplace learning.
I'll just push this. Sorry. Boom. Back. Hello everyone. Nice intimate room, isn't it, today? I've seen a few faces out there that probably been to Goose, but this film was made by Charlie Moore's doing physiotherapy now, and there's little footage from a drone at the end of it that was done just this summer. So some people say things never change at Goose, but it does. I'd have to say we had the 50th anniversary of Goose last year, so this is at the end of the year. At Scotch, things are moved on if they're not very good, not successful. But Goose has survived and is prospering. So let's just have a look at that. So Belinda, right arrow on the keyboard. Good sound? Apparently not. Oh well, I'll just talk through it. So, you know, like with all I'll just talk through it while we're watching this. As with all footage these days, I suppose the GoPros and all that sort of thing really improve it. Some people in this room might have even been to Goose, I think. You know? So students essentially go in their PLP groups, I think, do they all? Some?
Yes, 6 classes and 5 camps.
Okay. So it's not fixed because at the same time that students are going on and doing the dreaded morning dip night. At the same time as there's a group out of Goose, your sons and daughters will be either involved in community service or they might be doing a work placement. And some of them might actually get a workplace opportunity, work placement. I'll talk about that in a minute. At the same time, they might be going on their program camp. So it's a bit of a flexible movement of students to make it all work so everyone can get their best opportunities. Of course, there's all kinds of weather out there, and it's up and down in November, but you know, Scotch is pretty proud of its part of being, this is the first marine park in South Australia that was declared. So that was very cool, and that was done in 1971. So it's certainly stood the test of time. Anyone that went years ago probably would think it hasn't changed much, but there's lots less foxhole and all the equipment has been upped. Everyone has great wetsuits and protective clothing, and certainly the boats and so on we take out there are excellent. So it's a great experience. And some of you are thinking, oh dear, sea lions and human beings, but all the students when they're snorkeling there are wearing shark shields, which are, you know, sort of best practice side to use them. And we only snorkel in a very shallow area as well, so not out in deep water. Cut out that other bit. That's good. There are lots of, just so you see the eggs and sausages and all the rest, there's vegetarian options, there's gluten-free options, there's you name it. So obviously we cater for everyone these days, but the kids do all the cooking out there. So it's kind of, the hut itself is essentially, oh there you go, here's a drone footage at the end. This is a pretty cool stuff now that we're able to do. The hut stands out there in the middle of Spencer's Golf, and it's had the roof peeled off a few times and the veranda peeled off. Hopefully not there when that happens, but yeah, so that's Goose. And in theory, everyone was going on a training day tomorrow, but that's been postponed for now because there's a little bit too much wind, and there's a training day on Thursday which is on, and then hopefully the other one will be picked up later in the year. So if you've got any questions at all, happy to answer them about Goose. So that's the experience at the end of the year. Okay, workplace learning. Shall I come out from behind here? Okay. Pardon? Oh, sorry about that. Okay, it's getting recorded. So workplace learning. This is a big step for a lot of kids because they're out from behind the desk and they're in a workplace of different types. We haven't really started talking to kids about this yet, but it's good to have you here to talk to you about this.
because if students have a particular interest or passion, the good placements get snapped up. So, you know, for instance, places like the SAMRI, if they're into science, SAMRI building, do offer placements for students, but they're not going to be there in August when a kid gets around to trying to find a work placement. So we're going to start talking about this soon, and if your son or daughter has a particular interest, then you need to get them involved with that. So that could be from performing arts to science to maths to engineering, whatever. There are some interesting aspects to probably a work placement. Some kids think they'll be the CEO when they go in there, but as Bill Gates says, you've got to do a bit of the hard yards before you're going to get a phone and a car and some kind of package. So sometimes work placement isn't exactly what they expect it to be, but it's always a really good experience. Now, some students have, and we find this a lot at Scotch, a lot of students have a variety of interests. So they might, last year we had one girl do, I think, 7 different placements, which is a nightmare for us because there's all of this paperwork, which is fine. But she wanted to have a variety of experiences in a lot of different fields, so that happened. Some students just do 5 days, some students do 2 and 3 or whatever, and it can be split up. So there's no exact formula for that. But that's a conversation that you and your sons and daughters need to start having. You might see a date here at the bottom that we'd like to have the paperwork done by then. So obviously that's the ideal time, but there's a lot of compliance issues for us now about getting all of the paperwork in place, making sure it's safe for the kids because they're off campus and all that sort of thing. So that's really important that you do that. Workplace learning, I think, is a fantastic thing. I think, kids are busy now and perhaps they don't have part-time jobs so much, they don't get out and about. So I think it's terrific that students get out and look at those opportunities. So there are a few provisos in that. Let's say a student is interested in health science, perhaps medicine, something like that. It is very difficult now to get a placement for all sorts of ethical reasons in public hospitals. Perhaps it's best if you have a friend, that's always good, a family friend or something, and that way they might be able to accommodate them. But public hospitals are hesitant now for students in Year 10 to do a work placement. It's very difficult even as a Year 11 student to go out and do those work placements. We have ways in though, and we've had students who have gone and volunteered at the Flinders Medical Centre, for instance, and the experience isn't very much different from being on the wards. They see all that goes on, but they're volunteering in a different way. So, that's probably an option in that way. So just got to think of this creatively and you have a conversation with your children. Having said that, if someone's got an absolute passion, let's make that happen for them. It may solidify that idea, or it might actually make them go in a different direction, as happened for my son. Work can be done, work placements can be done interstate. We've had a student helping produce American Rosso radio program. That's pretty much on the edge, by the way, I think, and I've listened to it. In Sydney, Australia Zoo, tugboats out of Western Australia. There's all kinds of options depending on where your sons and daughters want to go. All of those things do require different sorts of paperwork and different kinds of planning from our perspective. So if that's what we want to do, let's make that happen earlier. All of those opportunities are out there for our students, so let's make them happen. And the last point I think is very important, book early to avoid disappointment. There is a grid which you all have access to, and the students will be planning which camp they're on, and then we can move that around a little bit if there's an opportunity in a work placement, so you change camps, the service learning you're doing. So we need to have this in place so we know where everyone is over that festival of activities that are going on. So has anyone got any questions there? I hope that's all clear. Thank you. I'm handing over to Peter.
Pleasure. much, and I am the Service Learning Coordinator. I'm going to talk to you about two things. First thing is Kickstart for Kids, and then the second thing is the service learning placement that your students will be doing at the end of the year. Can I have a show of hands to see who has heard of Kickstart for Kids? Wow, that's awesome. So, for those of you who don't know, quick run through, Kickstart for Kids is a not-for-profit organisation that runs in primary schools and facilitates breakfast programs for students who may be underprivileged, might have financial difficulties and rocked up to school without breakfast. They also run reading and mentoring programs, and we are lucky enough to jump on board and visit those schools. We've got a partnership with 2 schools that we've been visiting for the last 2 years, and each Year 10 gets the opportunity to jump on our Scotch bus twice, at least twice. They're expected to do it, and then if they enjoy it and want to participate in further weeks, then they are able to as well. So your student will receive, well, you will receive a Care Monkey request, and your young person will jump on board. It's actually 7:15 a.m. and so they'll be out of class, just one class twice, and that'll be a PLP class. And so while your student is there, they get to engage with younger primary school kids, and it's actually, although it's an early start, all the kids, all of our Scotch students are just beaming with joy on the way back from the Kickstart for Kids session, because it's been such a great opportunity to engage with different people from different backgrounds. And at one of the schools we run a program, you can see up in the top right hand corner, we play games, and they're literacy and numeracy games for the Aboriginal kids that go to the school there, to encourage them to A, come along to school on time, and B, get them up to speed with their literacy and numeracy. So that's a really important program, and the primary schools that we've partnered with are incredibly grateful for Scotch's involvement. So I look forward to that. Does anyone have any questions about that at the moment? No? Come and chat to me later if you do. So then the second thing that I'm talking about is service learning. So the block at the end of the year when your young person isn't at workplace learning or isn't at Goose, they'll be spending 5 days doing service learning. So that's giving back to the community. That can be the community here in our local neighbourhood, or if your young person is a boarder, they can do their service learning back at home. And essentially it's helping a third party, and generally that's a not-for-profit organisation or a charity. And so why service learning? Scotch College exists because of the philanthropy of others. So we like to continue that culture and foster a culture of service and volunteering and giving back. And so also another important thing is that for any students to be part of the school leadership, there isn't a big element of service. And some of the school leaders in this year in particular have done quite a lot of service. So it all starts from before Year 10, but Year 10 is an excellent opportunity for your student to really sink their teeth in and jump on board some wonderful opportunities. Some other excellent reasons for service learning to be doing 5 days is that it can be a great thing to be put on to a resume. So our students develop wonderful skills that they may not get in their workplace experience or just in sports, etc., because they may not have thought about delving into these different areas. So it just opens our young people's eyes, puts them into a place of sometimes discomfort, but in a safe way. So what does it entail? 5 days, like all the other opportunities, and it's generally about 25 hours in total. There is a little bit of flexibility because there are some places that start at various times, so we take that into consideration. And the students We do have some placements that students can come to us and talk through those options. However, it's important for your sons and daughters to think about what it is that they're interested in and to seek out opportunities that they know of, whether that's through your own personal networks and contacts, or otherwise there are opportunities for students to come and talk to us to see if we have any networks that we can lock them into a placement. So if that is the case and that there are students that want to find their own placements, obviously there is some importance around child protection, so we need to have evidence that the placement has child protection policies and insurance and an adequate induction process. And then for all placements, students and their parents are responsible for transport to and from the placement. How can parents help? So, as I said, start talking to your child about what it is that they might be interested in. I'll give you some ideas of what does exist already. And there are some placements that require a police clearance or a clearance through DCSI, Department of Child and Social Inclusion. If you can get that process happening now, that will save a whole lot of stress at the end of the year. And if you need assistance with that, I'm more than happy to give you guidance. I might even put a bit of a link up on the PLP sector page. In the same way that work placements, the good ones get snatched up early, so do volunteer placements. So get in early and you can see the rest there. So there are some options. Last year there were some students that did quite a bit of volunteering at Carrick Hill, so we've got a good relationship with Carrick Hill just up the road, so an environmental focus. That can be some hard, long days, but it's all of the students that were involved ended up enjoying that and appreciating the work that some people do on a day-to-day basis. Then there are some social services. There are some opportunities to go to Hope Cafe, which is a place where new arrivals and refugees go to spend time in the community, and they can have help with their English. And there's also a cafe there, so our students can help serve and clean in the cafe. There's also a creche there, so they can engage with some younger kids. A lot of our students go to different primary schools in the area, and that's a great way to get some involvement with young people, and just to see how a school operates as well. So if they're interested in that road, then that's good to get involved with as well. As Mark Kelly mentioned, in the medical sense, it can be tricky to get your student into a work placement environment. However, we do have some avenues in volunteering, and one particularly good one that popped up last year that any student that was involved, they just absolutely loved it and had a great time. There's a residential facility for people with high needs disabilities, and it's an excellent opportunity for our students who are interested in the medical field to volunteer, spend some time with people with disabilities and work, and they can ask questions of the workers and the staff, and then they also really get to know someone on a personal level and develop empathy for that person. And then furthermore, there's community service options, so less confronting, but just as important, things like Meals on Wheels, and that's wonderful as well, to get to know other volunteers and ask them why it is they volunteer and hear their stories. So there's plenty of opportunities. So how to organise your placement? Can go through the options and talk to the service learning coordinator, myself, or the PLP teacher, and then fill out the form. So, over to Belinda.
So we're at the recap end of the presentation now. So the key dates. So in term 1, we're really focusing on starting off those 10 transferable skills and also getting the Moresby testing. On Tuesday the 3rd of April, that's Tuesday after Easter, which I believe is week 10 of this term, There's a parent information evening about Moresby. It's from 7 till 7:45. That's the night the students will receive their Moresby results back. Each student receives a 20-page book with all the results, all their strengths, how the profile fits together. And we actually have the head of Moresby in Australia and New Zealand who comes and explains what all the tests mean and how it all works. It's actually a really enlightening night, and the students and the parents are both encouraged to come along and get a lot out of it. And we take the students to the Tertiary Studies and Careers Expo. Term 2, the Future Planning Evening, is a night that explains what SACE is all about, subject choices, pathways for the future, and the ways to keep options open. In Term 3, we need to finalise, if at all possible, those workplace learning and service learning arrangements. And in Term 4, the students have normal lessons from weeks 1 to 5. In week 5, they have, this will all be emailed out, but in week 5, they have 3 days of exams from the 14th to the 16th of November. The following week, Monday of week 6, the students start that festival rotation of 5 days of work experience, 5 days of workplace learning, 5 days of service learning, and 5 days of goose camp. So what happens, I'll be working through this with the students in PLP this week, but just so that you hear it from your end, the students need to book their own workplace learning and service learning dates around their goose camp. So you need to know what goose camp they're on and what the goose camp dates are. So if you go to the PLP cover page, and this was correct as of about 5 o'clock this afternoon, down the bottom of that cover page are some documents you can download. You may not be able to read them from where you are, but the top one is the Workplace Learning Agreement form. That's the paperwork for the work experience. The Service Learning PLP Consent 2018 is the equivalent version for service learning. The Year 10 End of Year Dates document is the document that Mark showed you with the different columns, and goose camps are in blue. That's your starting point for planning these experiences. And what you do is any day that's not blue in the correct column for your child's camp is when they can choose their workplace learning or their service learning. So different students will be doing different things at different times. You need to find out their goose camp by looking at the bottom document, which is Goose Groups 2018. Now, if for some reason you find that perhaps you need to change the dates of your goose camp, the only person who can authorise that is Dale Bennett. So you will need to email him. And we are very limited with the number of students who can go on any camp because of the size of the island. So if there is an amazing experience that can only happen at a particular time and that happens to clash with their currently allocated goose camp, I'd encourage you to email Dale. He's very supportive. So also please check during the year. We'll encourage the students too, but if your child's goose camp changes, they will be made aware of that too. So finally, the key contacts. I'm the PLP coordinator, so any questions you have about PLP, please feel free to contact me. Careers counsellors, we divide them up according to house. So Mark Kelly oversees Douglas, Gordon and McGregor. I oversee Cameron, Campbell and Stewart. So when it comes to those one-on-one interviews for Moresby, they're the houses that we'll be doing, and we encourage the students to come back in Year 10, throughout Year 11, throughout Year 12 to keep touching base, and we keep refining those conversations. And the Service Learning Coordinator is Pepita March, so any questions about that, we'd encourage you to direct them to her. The students can also ask their PLP teachers. So there has been a huge amount of information. We will email out a link to all of these slides in the next few days. Thank you very much for coming along, and we'll hang around for a few minutes if you have any questions. Thank you.